Okay, I think it's working. So I'm gonna let everybody in and we'll get rolling here, guys. Okay, we are strolling in or logging in here slowly but surely. So good evening, everybody. We're gonna get rolling here in just a second. Uh, Thanks for joining us this evening. Got a pretty good turnout, so excited about that for pretty epic range of rums with Mitch from Black Tot, who's joining us live from Amsterdam, where it would have been 3 in the morning, but it's only 2 in the morning because they've beaten us to daylight savings time. Um, Before we get going, before I turn things over to Mitch here, just a quick reminder, we've got a bunch of other tastings coming up in the not too distant future. What have we got? We've got our unconventional blends tasting next week. Uh, but lots of stuff. And as Harmony has updated, all of our tastings are now poured and ready for pickup. So there's the 21-year-olds. We've got a Taylor Fladgate tasting. That's sold out. I won't waste your time. The 90s Go Big or Go Home tasting, that's got a pretty sweet range, which we should probably update the photo on because it's missing at least 2 bottles. Unless they were surprises, I can't remember why. Maybe they weren't available at the time. We've got some stuff in store, including Patrick Van Zwedem to launch a Millstone cast that includes, the tasting will include our latest bottling, which is an Old Rosso Sherry. Richard Urquhart is at the store the following night. I believe both those guys are headed to Banff along with Harmony for the Banff Whiskey Experience. And then we get to December where we've got a really cool Glenallachie tasting that no one seems to be excited for, even though there's 3 sherry limited editions. I told James we should put the 30-year-old in that, but what are you going to do? And then we get into the Advent stuff. This is not an Advent calendar tastings. There are 5 of them, but really what you want is this guy, the Full Monty, which is all 5 of the tastings. Uh, it's not an Advent calendar, we know, but it's basically the exact same thing in 5 tastings. And we've preserved the elements of surprise because the whiskeys have no name on them. You have to either log on to our website or tune into the tasting to find out what the whiskeys are, but it's still going to be a ton of fun. I'm not going to go through too much more of that because I think most of you all are familiar with it and know where it's at. But that is the range. And what else have we got here for you? We have got, there's the tasting schedule link. I put the range in the chat earlier. I will put it back in here. We're going to start with the Black Tot Finest Caribbean, which I will say is my house rum. I never thought I would have a house rum being a whiskey guy, but I make more cocktails with that. I'm not just saying this to butter you up, Mitch. I make more cocktails with the Black Tot than I do with anything else. I've gone through 3.5 bottles since the start of the year. So, which
We
probably
were going to say
says I'm
today.
drinking too many cocktails. I'm not sure. Um, so Mitch is the brand ambassador for Black Tot Rum, which has gotten kind of exciting in the last few years, but he's been the brand ambassador for the last 5 years. Why he's based in the Netherlands is actually part of the story of rum that might surprise a lot of people. Amsterdam and the Netherlands being one of the big markets it's brokered through. But Mitch has been involved in the rum industry now for 8 years total, and brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. And we've got something cool here, Mitch. How many tastings have you done with the 50th anniversary and 4 limited editions?
Oh, this is pretty rare. And to be honest, the 50th anniversary now is so limited that this will probably be one of the only ones we actually get to do the whole 5 years of. So yeah, this is certainly the only one we're doing in Canada, I'm pretty sure. So
We've tucked at least another bottle of this aside, so in a year or two we can do like that plus 6
amazing.
limited editions. So,
Nice.
but for
I want to
now,
do
we've
the
got.
10 I want to do the 10 year and just do one of the most hardcore rum sessions.
I think you'll have to
10
come out
Navy
for that
Strokes in
one
a
in
row.
person. I think we'd have to
I
do that one
agree.
in person. So
I agree.
anyway, well, Mitch, thanks for joining us, especially for staying up late. Before we get into this, do you want to give people a little bit of a background on the brand Black Tot and where it all came from?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone, and thank you for joining. So just I'll run through a little bit of the history of Black Tot and Navy Rum in general, and how we all got here. And I'll share a few pictures with you guys as well. So we actually started uh, almost 15 years ago now with the original Black Tot bottling, which was called Black Tot Last Consignment. And this bottling came about really through a pretty extraordinary set of circumstances. And I'm going to share some pictures with you now if it comes up. So you can see a little bit here. So first of all, I think it's good to sort of have a look at where the origins of rum blending started, because for me, I always thought this was something that came from tiki bars, Trader Vic's, on the Beachcomber, 3, 4, 5 different rums in a cocktail. And then when you start to look at the history of Navy rum, you realize that 100 years before the Trader Vic's and On the Beachcombers were even opened, you had the Navy blending rum from all different parts of the world. And when you look back at some of the historical references, you see these guys who are taking their daily tot every morning at 11 a.m. And this, if you look at the picture, the guy third in holding the jar, the flagon of Navy rum here, that's a jar of rum, 4.5 liters, 1 imperial gallon. The person in the middle with the black book, he would be the purser or the pusser, writing down who got their rum ration and who had misbehaved and wouldn't get their rum ration for the day. And all the rest of the guys here are coming up with their jars here to collect rum for their mess deck and for their little crew. Now, the Navy were getting their rum, as I say, every morning. They were getting a watered down version for the most part called grog. And this was true from 1740 onwards. This one's a bit of a rowdy crew. This one's a bit more of a orderly crew. This is
Still,
us
they're standing
before
very
daiquiris.
close. I mean,
Yeah.
they're quite excited to get their rum.
Well, you got to make sure. So these guys, when you see them holding these big buckets, these big jars, these are called fannies back in the day, and they would be responsible for collecting the rum for maybe 6, 7, 10, 12 people. And if they didn't get their fair share of rum by the time they got back to their mess deck to share it out, they're the ones who are going to get beaten up. So they're checking everyone's rum ration. They're making sure we're all getting the right amount. You've got the purser on the side here, frantically trying to make sure that everyone gets the right amount of rum for their crew. And this tradition happened officially, we know, from 1731 up until 1970, where they issued the last ever tots of rum. All the sailors wore black armbands, had a funeral for the rum, and they called it Black Tot Day. It was the death of the rum ration. And how we started was actually with those flagons that you saw in the picture. So the Navy, in order to be able to supply the whole fleet, were creating these giant rum blends in these vats that you see on the left. So these are actually some of the smaller vats. So just over 4,000 gallons, that would be about 16,000 liters. And they would have about 50 of these vats that were blending together, all with a pipe a third of the way up, all open top vats that would all be connected. So the idea was you could blend rum from any vat and eventually it would all blend together. Now, after Black Tot Day, they had a lot of this rum left over and it all went into these boxes and into these flagons. So if you ever see a box like this, call me. This box contains 2 flagons of Navy rum. So there's clues on these boxes that tell us where and when it was bottled. So faded in red on the side here, Antwerp. Inside, when you crack it open, you get more clues like PKD 11/55. So we know this box was packed in November 1955. And inside, you get these flagons of Navy rum. Now, if they're intact and they still have the wax seal intact on the right, you see this red seal, and on the outside it says where, and on the inside when it was bottled. So 12-70, December 1970, 5 months after Black Tot Day. it's important to always weigh the boxes before you buy any, because if they might have leaked, they might have cracked. The rum sometimes has come out. A box of 2 flagons of rum should weigh pretty much exactly 23 kilos. Any less, and you've probably lost some rum. You find some amazing old relics in here, like these ration cards that tell you how much rum to distribute to 10 men, 4 men, 24 hours. A box of biscuits feeds 100 men, a jar of rum feeds 80 men. So you can see straight away, they saw biscuits and rum as the same thing, just a provision that they had to give to the fleet. And this was one of the ways they issued it out. I don't know what happened to the guy who covered this in blood, but he got the rum in the box. That's the main thing. And so our first bottling that started 15 years ago was those flagons in a bottle. It's called Black Tot Last Consignment. It's the original Black Tot that we released back in 2010. We did about 3,000 bottles of this, and essentially once that rum is gone, that's it. We can't make it again. The distilleries that went into it don't exist anymore for the most part. And it really was a world blend that started in the 1800s and finished in 1970. So there's nothing else really like it in the world. And for 10 years at least, it was pretty much the only Black Tot that we had. We did one other bottling of a 40-year-old Demerara rum. And really, these were one-off editions. They weren't ever going to be carried on. And then a few years ago, the question became, what do we do when this rum runs out? And the answer is the other 6 rums that you're going to be tasting tonight, which is what we've been releasing over these last 5 years.
Very cool. Do those boxes still show up from time to time, or when was the last time one of those was found?
The boxes with the flagons in.
Yeah.
So Sukhinder Singh, so our founder, bought most of them, but there are still a few that appear in private collections and that you'll see pop up from time to time. A lot of them have come from Sukhinder himself, where people have either bought them from him or in auction and things like that. But it is still possible to find them in the wild sometimes. And I mean, on one of the rum groups recently on Facebook, I think someone found one of the flagons for about £80 in a garage sale somewhere, which made me feel slightly bad for the person in the garage sale because they just didn't know what they had. The flagons nowadays will go for between £2,000 and £3,000 a flagon often. So it's yeah, they do pop up in the wild, and it's worth keeping an eye out just in case.
Cool.
Yeah, that is cool. And having tried that last consignment, it's a beautiful rum, very, very unique. And kind of a cool brand. I always think it's funny though that, like, if you were to chart when the UK started arming submarines with nuclear weapons and when they cut off the rum ration, there's a bit of an overlap there. It's not a black and white. It's not like nuclear subs are a thing and then all of a sudden they cut off the rum ration. There's got to be at least a decade of nuclear weapons and sailors who are still getting their grog.
Yeah, we invented nuclear submarines in 1958, I believe. And for 12 years, we said, should we still give rum every day to the guys on the nuclear submarines? And for 12 years, we said, yes, absolutely. Carry on. Now, it was slightly different in Canada because you've got to think every navy around the world was running its own sort of formalities by that time. So Canada actually carried on for another couple of years. You guys carried on.
We didn't have any
30...
nukes though. So
yeah. You guys carried on till the 31st of March, 1972. And then the winners, though, were New Zealand. They carried on till the 28th of February, 1990. So they carried on for another 20 years.
God bless them.
Again, probably
Well,
not a lot of nuclear warfare going on around New
no,
Zealand.
and if you
at
followed
the
the
time,
news
so.
last month, one of their ships went aground. So maybe they're still giving them the rum rations. Who knows?
Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
All right. So we have 5 kind of special older, more mature rums but we're starting off with kind of your everyday rum, but the principle behind it, I believe, is the principle behind all of them. They're all blended rums, as opposed to from a single distillery, single country. So yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit? We can get people's whistles wet with the Black Tot finest here.
Absolutely. So we're kicking off with Black Tot Finest Caribbean today. So ironically, this is the rum that probably has taken us the longest and spent the most time getting the blend right for this, because this was actually the first rum that our blender Oliver Chilton put together. Now, if you're familiar with our company, Elixir Distillers, we actually make 3 whiskey brands: Porter-Skeg, Elements of Islay, and Single Malts of Scotland. And Oliver Chilton is our blender for all of them. So he'd been working in whiskey and blending whiskey for many, many years. Then when he came to Black Tot, and the question became, what are we going to do when this last consignment is running out? The first thing that we looked at was creating this blend, Black Tot Finest Caribbean. And you'll hear a lot of different things online and people's different opinions on this, and that it was a recreation of last consignment, or it was trying to hark back to it. Not really. The idea with this rum was, if we were going to do a navy blend today, what would it taste like? What does the modern palate appreciate? What does the modern palate like? What are the distilleries that are available today that might not have been in operation back in the navy time? So one of our big components in this blend is from Barbados, from Foursquare. Foursquare back in the day wouldn't have been an operating rum distillery. It would have been a sugar factory back in the day. So these are newer components. The Jamaican component in there, Worthy Park, the Navy famously weren't big fans of Jamaican rum because they found it too intense, too flavorful, too funky. Whereas today, obviously, a lot of rum lovers adore Jamaican rum. So Ollie, together with Sukhinder, created this blend, Black Tot Finest Caribbean. And this was, as I say, this was the first thing we released since last consignment. And one of the things that we've really tried to champion with Black Tot, and that I'm very passionate about, is that we give all of the blend information. We give a lot of transparency with everything that we do. Because I think sometimes, and this really carries over from the whiskey world. I think sometimes there's a negative connotation with this idea of a blend, and that single malts are better or single origin is better. In truth, that doesn't always work out, but where I think that thinking comes from is usually when you speak to someone about a blend, whether it's whiskey or rum. Normally they'll say, oh, we've got this great blend, and you say, what's in it? And they say, oh, it's a secret recipe, we're not going to tell you. And as soon as someone says secret recipe, rather than feeling it's mysterious and exotic, my default is I normally think, okay, you're probably using something crap then, or you're using some
Yeah.
what these ingredients are. And that really isn't the case at all. What we're using here, you've got some 5-year Barbados coming from Foursquare. You've got some 2 different Guyanese rums in the blend coming from Demerara Distillers, which is the only distillery in Guyana today. And then the 3 fantastic distilleries all by their own rights. Why not celebrate and talk about where these rums are coming from, so we can really be transparent, tell you what's in the bottle, and tell you what flavors you're going to be working with. So all the rums that you're tasting in this one are all aged in the Caribbean, all aged in their country of origin. All molasses based, all ex-bourbon casks. We don't chill.
Seem to have a hiccup in the
Oh.
connection. Oh, we lost you there for a second, Mitch, or at least I did. I don't know if everyone did.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think they ration out the internet here at this time in Amsterdam.
Fair.
What where did we get up to?
Uh, that's a good question. I think you were talking about well, so there's some comments here about Compass Box vibes and that the transparency that you have. We don't filter. Harmony's got a much better short-term memory than I do here. And there's a
Yes.
question about the high ester mark. Since you mentioned Worthy Park, which mark is it?
Yeah, good question. So this component's actually a little bit of a blend. So it's not a straight WPL or WPH. It's a little bit of a blend of it, but yeah, it's not the highest ester marks that they make because Worthy Park can go up to around 600-700 kind of mark. This probably sits final figure probably in the 200-300 kind of mark, something like that. So sort of mid-range for them.
Just
But
out of
it gives it a
curiosity,
little
Mitch,
kick.
because I don't know if
Yeah.
did you try at Whiskey Live Paris, the guys from Rest and Bee had a high ester Jamaican rum that was like a palate killer. Like he even said like afterwards, he's like, I got to give you a clean glass for after this rum because you're not gonna be able to put anything else in the glass. And I tried
Yes.
whiskey, he was right. It was insane.
To be honest, at Whiskey Live Paris, I barely made it off the stands. It's such a busy show there, but yeah, they do some fantastic bottlings there for the Rest and Bee guys. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
just couldn't
I have no doubt.
I don't think I fully appreciated the like how high ester some of this stuff can go. Like I've tried some really funky fruity, but I don't think I appreciated it until I tried that. It was like someone had distilled concentrated like fruit esters and it was just like spraying it in your face from a fire hose.
Yeah, it can be pretty intense, and obviously there's some amazing bottlings now which really show you the full range of higher ester stars. By the way, for everyone's video that I can see, who is everyone here a rum nerd? Does everyone know what we're talking about when we talk about esters? Or is
There's a
anyone
couple
just looking at me
hands
like,
up.
what the hell are we talking about? Yeah, okay, all right. So um well, since we're on it, let's do a quick side dive into this, because if you spend 5 minutes online on any of the rum groups, you're going to hear about esters. And I think it can be a really confusing topic, depending on how it's explained. And I think it's good to just have at least have a basic understanding of what esters are and where they're coming from. So in brief, as a really short description, esters are the fruit smells that appear in your rum or your whiskey or your cognac or whatever you're smelling. So if you smell a spirit and you go, oh, I've got coconut and bananas and pineapples and mangoes and these kind of flavors, if it's not a flavoring that's been added, that is, if it's something naturally occurring in the liquid, we would call that an ester. Okay, and esters are chemical compounds that are created during fermentation through distillation, and they come out in the liquid and they give you these different smells. Esters, chemically, how do we make an ester? What is an ester? Okay, this is the very scientific part. When an acid molecule and an alcohol molecule love each other very much, they come together and they make a little ester baby, okay? And depending on the types of acids and the types of alcohols, they will come together to make all different types of ester babies. So I'll give you an example here of just what these look like so you can see what I actually mean. So this is not ours, this is on the internet. You guys can Google this and find this. But along the top, you've got all the different types of alcohol. Down the side, you've got all the different types of carboxylic acids. And when they come together, these are the general perceived flavors that they're making that they come together. Okay, so it's not your fancy wine som friend or someone who pretending to smell things in the liquid that you've never imagined. Like, these actually do come through with different chemical compounds that are formed. Now, there's an added layer of complication to this that sometimes comes through, because you can see here there's bananas, there's pineapples, there's pears, there's apples, there's all these sort of quite useful smells and flavors, which might give me an idea of what kind of rum you like. But when rum nerds talk about high esters or low esters, the only ester they're talking about is this one, ethyl ethanoate, which is the one that's marked as PVA glue on this chart here. So why do they measure that one? Because that one is always there. You're always going to have ethanol, because ethanol is what you're trying to end up with anyway. And ethanoate, the other word for it would be acetic acid or vinegar. So if you have any acidity at all, you're going to have vinegar and you're going to have ethanol. They come together, they make that one. Because that one's really easy to measure and it's always present, rum companies, especially in Jamaica, will use ethyl ethanoate or ethyl acetate as their measuring stick. And so they measure that one, and they can measure it in terms of the number of grams in the liquid, but even that is very obscure. So when we say, a rum like Worthy Park in this blend is 200 esters, we're saying there's 200 grams per hectoliter of absolute alcohol. So if there was 100 liters of the rum and it was at 100% ABV, which is theoretically impossible, and we evaporated everything off except for the ethyl acetate, there'd be 200 grams left. What does that mean? Absolutely nothing, right? Okay, it tells you nothing. Tells you nothing about the flavor. It tells you nothing about what Worthy Park flavors are going to give you versus Hampton versus something else. But as soon as you put a number on something, everyone wants to drink the highest, right? So it becomes this like, oh, that's only 200 S's. I want the 1,000 ester one. Oh, only 1,000. I want the 1,600, And in Jamaica, you can have anywhere up to 1,600 esters. And nowadays you can buy them. But when you try a 1,600 ester rum, it tastes like rocket fuel. It's not designed to be drunk by itself. It's designed to be blended. It's designed to add adding a little chili to your sauce, adding a little spice. So in small amounts, it can really lift a blend. It can really add depth and complexity. But by itself, it's really, really, really full on. But, rum nerds want to try the crazy stuff out there. We're all interested, we're all fascinated. So this stuff will exist out there, but that just gives you a little sort of insight into what esters are, where you'll hear about them, and so on.
But if we're picking up what you're putting down, they're not exactly made to be drank as is. They're a component for blending. Now you made the comment that if the alcohol and the acid love each other, what if they don't? What happens then?
Yeah, it doesn't always happen straight away. These things and a lot of the esters and a lot of the bigger flavors in the esters, which are formed, or long chain esters, we'd call them, take time to come together. And this is one of the reasons why we look at things like fermentation times. So the longer that you have your rum or your molasses fermenting, the more time you have for those esters to form. And if you call back to the chart with all the different types of alcohol, you've got to think after you distill it, the main alcohol, really the only alcohol you want left in your liquid is ethanol. And that writes off all the other different types of alcohol. So those esters can only be formed in the fermentation process before distillation. And the longer the fermentation, the more flavors you might have created. The shorter the fermentation, you're not going to get as many. And when we look at the different components we work with, Barbados typically will do a 2 to 3 day fermentation for the component we're using. Guyana, we do a 1 to 2 day fermentation, and Jamaica will do a 1 to 3 week fermentation. So we go from hours to weeks at a time, and that's part of the reason why Jamaica rum is so big, so full, so intense, and why it's such a fantastic rum to play with, especially in these blends.
I thought I was just making a joke, but really there's more science behind it. So Mitch,
we take our rum very seriously.
No, that's great. I mean, people are here to nerd out on this stuff. So, so where are we at? Are we good with the Black Tot? Should we move on to the 50th anniversary, or where are we at here?
Yeah, so I think just to finish off on the Finest Caribbean, I mean, this, as you said, Andrew, that this is your everyday rum. This is really designed to be your sort of all-rounder. It's the rum I certainly go through the most. I have, you probably can't see here at the moment, but I have this fridge, which I specifically bought this fridge because it has a water reservoir in the fridge that isn't plumbed in. It's a 3.5 liter tank, which you can sort of put a glass up to, and it's actually perfect for storing rum Negronis in, because rum Negronis do not go off. So
Whoa.
I put 2 bottles of this, a bottle of Campari, a bottle of sweet vermouth in the fridge, add about 10% water just to dilute, keep it in there, and it's perfect, just on tap. Any parties you're holding, anything at all, people can just come in, help themselves, get a glass of that. So,
That is, Mitch, that is legendary. You're the first person I know that has a fridge that serves Negronis. It's incredible. I will say though, just before we leave off on that, you've got some great resources on your website for cocktails, which is one of the things I love. I would say I'm on there once every other week at least, looking to see what I want to make with the Black Tot. So, and
Thank
again,
you.
I'm not just saying this, like I don't know, the Black Tot for cocktails, it's currently neck and neck with mezcal for my favorite cocktail spirit. So
That's awesome. No, thank you. I think it is a fantastic, it's a great rum on its own, but it is a fantastic versatile rum for cocktails. And it's because you've got all these different layers of flavor in, coming back to this idea of having the blend, sometimes you want a bit of that Jamaica funk, you want a bit of that chocolatiness from the Guyana, you want some of that fruit from the Barbados. And by blending them all together in a rum, you can really kick through in a lot of cocktails and give it a lot of flavor. So one of my favorites, if you can see it here, I don't know if you can see, there's the Jungle Bird. This is an old 1950s cocktail from Malaysia, fresh pineapple, Campari, lime. These are very big flavors. If you mix a light rum with them, the rum can get lost behind these other big flavors, whereas something like Black Tot really shines through in it, and it's a delicious cocktail. If you haven't made a Jungle Bird before, I highly recommend it.
I'm also going to be selling my wife on the necessity of having a fridge with a non-plumbed in bladder so that I can serve. I mean, just so that I can have Negronis ready to go whenever I need. So chilled,
That's it.
no less chilled. That's the key factor.
Pre-chilled, ready. You have the freezer underneath with your frozen glassware in and ice if you need it. Perfect.
God, you got this all figured out. Mitch, you're like, we've learned so much already. Um,
But I see a lot of comments with people asking how to convince your other half of it. You just need an accident to happen to your existing fridge, and when you're looking, they don't necessarily need to know that that water compartment is such a key feature, but wouldn't it be nice just in case? Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure there's room in one of our basement rooms that doesn't get utilized to put an extra fridge just for the purpose of chilling glasses and a bladder of ready to pour Negroni. So, right. We better keep the show on the road, Mitch. Otherwise, you're going to be up until breakfast time. So why don't we start off or go off to the 50th anniversary rum and the story behind it, because that kind of kicked off all the rums that sort of follow after it.
Yeah. So back in 2020, before COVID and everything else kicked off, the main focus for us that year was that it was going to be the 50th anniversary of Black Tot Day. And so this was everything about Black Tot was geared up to this 50th anniversary and this sort of re-release of the brand. We had Finest Caribbean coming out. That's when I joined Black Tot at the start of that year. And the blend we wanted to bring out for 50th anniversary, really the thinking was let's create the craziest, most amazing rum blend that anyone has ever seen, putting some of the most ridiculous single casks together and go from there. So just to give you a little insight into here as well, and I'll share my screen again with you. So So this just so you sort of know our team behind the scenes. So Sakinder Singh, who's our founder, who started Elixir Distillers and also is the person responsible for tracking down all those flagons in the first place for last consignment. Oliver Chilton, our blender, who creates all of the blends that we're trying tonight. And some guy who drinks daiquiris on the left. So this is who we're referring to when we talk about these people. So 50th anniversary, as I say, when Ollie started working on this blend, and we were really starting in, at the start of 2020, and he was trying all different cask samples and talking about what he might put in there. And by the time he got to the final blend, it was, I mean, he showed me everything that was in this blend, and I'd never seen a rum blend like it. There was and still to this day isn't anything really that I think comes close to these kind of rums that he was putting together, other than maybe the next years of Master Blenders Reserves. And I said to Ollie, I was like, can we tell people what's in this blend? Can we be really transparent about it? Could we just put it on the bottle? And at the time, we said, well, we don't know, because in whiskey it's not actually allowed. Someone mentioned compass box before. You're not allowed to put blend percentages on whiskies. You're not allowed to put different age statements and different age ranges and have that, because they're worried it could be used to mislead people. Or there might be non-disclosure agreements with various distilleries and things. So in whiskey it's not allowed, but in rum, for where some people say, oh, rum has no rules, which isn't true. There's lots of rules in rum, but one of the rules that doesn't exist in rum is being able to share blend percentages and actually being as transparent as you like. So on the back label of this rum, we put all of this information, and it's on the back label on the bottle itself. Do you still have bottles of this in Canada? Are you guys able to?
Yes, we won't mention, but yes, we can get this for people if they want it, is the bottom line. There is a reservoir of this at retailers that are good at purchasing things but not selling them. So
okay, well,
just
if
leave
you
it at
guys
that.
don't buy it before I get over there, I'm buying it, because when I see this in a shop now, I buy these bottles, because
Mitch,
it is
if
so
you
rare
require a
now.
bottle or two, that can be arranged.
Thank you. But yeah, I mean, the rums in this blend, when you look at it, so we've got some Demerara distillers, 12 years, 9 years. We've got some 11-year Foursquare, some 10-year Trinidad distillers, some 9-year Hamptons, some 10-year Port Morant, some 23-year-old Caroni, some 42-year-old Port Morant, and some of the flagons of the Navy rum. So where it says original Royal Navy blend, that's last consignment in this blend. I mean, it's stunning. It really is. It's such a treat to be able to drink this rum every time, and as long as there's some left, it's really, really amazing. So yeah, if you find some in Canada, get it. This, for me, out of everything we're trying tonight, is probably the most classic Navy style, if you like. If there's one rum that really does hark back to this old Navy style, it would be the 50th anniversary. And then from there, I think each year we take it in lots of different directions, but the 50th anniversary is a real homage to the Navy blend. So cheers. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As Harmony was saying, I mean, I think what's cool about what you guys do with rum is, and this maybe is not, this is sort of underselling it, but these are, in addition to rums for maybe people who love rum on its own, these are rums that are also going to appeal to whiskey drinkers, because there's a lot of complexity to them. And a big part of that is that blending component that you talk about. And, I can understand entirely why there's almost an apprehension to talk about that side of the rum, because especially in the whiskey side of things, the second you mention the B word, you've lost the attention of about a third of the audience. Like, they don't even care what follows after it. But it allows you to create things that are so interesting here. And to your point about the transparency and the fact you guys do that, like, I can't think of a lot of other rum companies that are that transparent about what's in their bottles. Because a lot of, like, as you say, a lot of the rules around rum are maybe not quite as formal. Like, you can insinuate your rum is 15 years old with it being not even remotely close to that. Like, there is a little bit of fast and loose in some of the industry. So you're actually backing up what you're bottling and saying, like, this is what's in it. And I think that's quite rare.
Yeah, I mean, to my knowledge, this was the first bottling that I've ever seen that had all the blend percentages on. I think we were the first in the rum world. I'm fairly confident in saying. And what's been really nice is since that, a lot of other rum brands have started being more transparent on their blend percentages, either putting it on the bottle or sharing it on the website or talking about it a bit more. And that for me is really exciting, you know, like it was never that I wanted us to be the only one. I really hoped that Black Tot would show people, you know, being transparent is a really good thing, and it can lead people to appreciate it more. And I think in some cases we have started to see that come through. So yeah, it's something I'm really proud of that we've done, and I will always be pushing for it. You know, and it's a nice thing that Elixir Distillers as a whole, I think everything we do is very transparent and very forthright with everything we do liquid wise.
Yeah. I mean, this is a big, rich rum. When I started nosing them and going through the range, you can almost see them becoming a little lighter and a little softer, although it kind of starts to go back up a little bit. Is there a trend line where the blend is going? I mean, maybe that's a bit of a segue into the next one, but like, this is kind of like some of this is produced in a Solera system, isn't it? Like, where you're blending it and maturing it. So is there a bit of continuity from batch to batch here?
So yes and no, and so some of you may have seen online as well that I don't believe it's in Canada yet, but we are releasing a new Black Tot rum called Black Tot Historic Solera, which is an actual Solera system, 3-tier, 46 sherry butts, that we've been setting up for the last 5 years, and we've been running our Black Tot Finest Caribbean through. So hopefully that will be in Canada at some point early next year. And the idea with that one was to really do an authentic Solera system, because sometimes the word Solera gets bandied around a little bit in the rum world, and not always is it a real Solera system. So the idea with that rum was to really do it as close as possible to the Jerez sherry systems and really create an authentic Solera system. So that's its own thing. When we started this, there was a kind of a little bit of a confusion of what to call it and what to refer to it as, because what we started doing was taking a little bit of each year's rum, putting it into sherry casks and using it as the base for the next year's rum. And it wasn't really a Solera, but as soon as you do any slightly complex blend in the rum world, most people call it a Solera. And we were trying to define it. And one of my friends in the UK, Dawn Davies, who's an amazing palate and amazing sommelier, master of wine over there, she said, "Oh no, what you guys are actually doing is called a perpetual reserve. It's a perpetual blend. And you're taking a little bit of each year's rum, you're putting it aside, and it's a champagne term. It's something they do in the champagne world, where they keep a sort of reserve of the wine aside, and they can use that for consistency each year, and they can draw upon it as they need. And we really loved it being that specific definition. So you'll see on each of the following bottles, we use this term perpetual reserve, and that's what we refer to the previous year's rum in. So let's have a little look at what that actually looks like and how that comes through, because it can be super confusing. So we started with 50th anniversary. When we blended this, it was March 2020, which, if you recall, wasn't a great time to travel or go anywhere at the time. And I would love to say that everything that happened after this was intentional, but there was a little bit of luck / a happy accident that happened here. And when we were blending 50th anniversary, you know, you see some of the components in there: 23-year-old Coroni, 42-year-old Port Morant, flagons of Navy rum. This is, when you're blending rums like that, you don't want any mistakes to happen. So we will normally always go to the blending hall, go to the bottling hall, make sure nothing happens. We couldn't do that because of COVID, so we sent all the blend percentages. We asked them to send back a sample, and when we tried the sample, we tried it, and it was like all we could smell was Jamaica. And then we tasted it, and we said, it just tastes of Jamaica. And we went back to the blending hall. We said, just checking the Hampton in there. You did just put a third of a cask in the blend, right? And they came back and they said, oh,
Oh,
a third of a cask of the highest ester, most crazy rum to 3 whole casks.
Oh,
And if there was one component in that blend which would completely throw out everything, it would be the Hampton. And so Ollie begins this mad search. It's 3 months to Black Tot Day. We've got to get it out by then. Ollie's calling everyone, you know, trying to find more casks of the other components to try and balance out the blend again. And they're like, oh no, we've already sold them, or they've already been promised to this person. He's like, please, can we get them? And they said, okay, well, look, if they don't pay on time, you can have the casks. And luckily it's the rum world, so no one pays anything on time. So we got the extra casks, and we were able
and
to.
it's COVID, so yeah, all
Yeah,
that.
exactly. We were able to balance out this blend. And so the original, if you see the very first iteration of this label, the Hampton was only 6%. It goes up to 8% with the readjustment. We adjusted it all out. But we were making 5,000 bottles of this bottling, and we ended up with an extra third of the rum. And I showed you those blending vats earlier on of how the Navy used to create this perpetual blend and top up these vats every single year. And I'd suggested to Ollie when I started, why don't we rebuild these blending vats and create what the Navy used to do and have open top vats? And he looked at me like, no, you can't have open vats of rum evaporating off 10% of rum per year. That's insane. It's a fire hazard. The tax people will shut you down. But when this happened, we ended up with this extra third of rum, and I get a call from Ollie, and he says, hey, you know, you wanted to do this perpetual blend. I was like, are we building the vats? We're not building the vats, but I'll take the extra third, we'll put it into sherry casks, and this will be the base for next year's blend. And so this went into Master Blenders Reserve 2021. And if you look at the back label, you actually see one of the components here is Black Tot 50th anniversary. And that's the start of our own perpetual reserve that we're adding to this every single year. So when we go on to 2021, one of the things you'll notice straight away is that it's a lot fruitier, it's a lot funkier on the nose. And when you start to look at the components in it, it starts to make sense. There's a lot of old Trinidad rum in here. There's some more Foursquare in there. We've got some Beanley, some Australian rum in there, a 14-year Beanley, which is really delicious, almost slightly herbal, citrus kind of note in the Beanley. Some Hampton, again, very fruity, very funky. Now, old Trinidad rum gives you these beautiful stone fruit flavors like peaches, apricots, those kind of flavors. And you'll notice there's a lesser amount of Guyanese rum in here, that very big, heavy, chocolatey component. So by dropping that down and letting the other fruit flavors come forward, you get a lot more funk and fruit on the nose on this one. So this one, if you like those Jamaican styles, if you like a little bit of fruitier style, then you'll love the 2021.
I cheated, Mitch. I've also gone on to the 2022, partly because I really love the evolution of the 50th anniversary through the 2021 and through the 2022. I haven't tried the 2023 or 2024 together with these yet, so I'm excited to try that. But you know, the recipe changes. Does it change based on availability, or is it a direction that you're trying to take the profile? Like, what dictates where you go in the years that follow, like 2023, 2024?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a little bit of both, if we're honest. So we're lucky that the variety and the scope of aged rums available now is really the best it's ever been. There's more a bigger range of distilleries, bigger range of different esters and styles and types than ever before. At the same time, the rum world has been really growing the last few years, and there's a lot more competition for those casks and a lot more people who are snapping them up and trying to get especially some of these very old rums for independent bottlings. Most of the time because they're just going to take the cask and put it straight in a bottle, because why would you do anything else to it? It's only us who's like, let's take these incredible casks and put them together in these blends and see what that creates. So it kind of goes in two ways. On one side, you have Ollie really starts with this idea and this envisaging of what that year's blend is going to taste like. So does he want to go fruitier? Does he want to go richer, heavier? And the 2022 is a really good example that we're coming on to, because with this year's one, Sekinda opened a bottle of 1970s Barbancourt, which is this Haitian rum, and the 1970s Barbancourt, quite different from the Barbancourt today, very, very rich, chocolatey, very much heavier style of rum. And he gave some to Ollie and he said, make this. and Ollie was like, we can't make 1970s Barbancourt. But he said, well, have a think about it, you know? And they started opening up a few different older rums from that kind of era, from the 60s, 70s. And one thing that they noticed was that there were flavors that were present in these older styles of rum that tend not to exist today. Same in the whiskey world, when you try some of these old, you know, Longmorns, and they have these beautiful grapefruit notes, and you go, well, that just doesn't exist today. That flavor doesn't exist. They don't make it the same way today that they did 50 years ago. And so for 2022, Ollie was like taking some of these notes from these old rums, and then when he's looking at all the casks that are available and trying different samples and choosing what to buy, he's then looking for which flavors will match up to this idea that he has and what flavors are going to work well for him. So, you know, he might try 100, 200 different samples of different casks. And, you know, the first thing to check is the cask any good? Do we want it for this year's blend? Might we want it for another year's blend? If it's great rum, you know, we're in a fortunate position that usually we'll try and buy it and hold on to it. But then when it comes to choosing the casks for the blend, it's really going, okay, it's almost like if you were going to paint a picture, you probably have an idea of what the picture is going to look like, or what you're trying to paint, or what colors it is. And then you choose the right colors to paint that picture. Or if you were trying to cook a meal, you're probably not going to throw random ingredients into a pan and hope for the best. Depends how good a cook you are. But you'll probably have an idea of, I want to cook a pizza, or I want to cook Thai food, or I want to cook this. You choose the right ingredients and you get those flavors through. And creating a blend is kind of the same thing. You have an idea of what you're trying to create. You choose the casks accordingly, and you hope it balances out. And you might go, oh, it needs a bit more of this or a bit more of this, and then you finally get to your blend that you're looking for. So the 2022 is probably one of the best examples of this, where we really had these old rums in mind, and then we wanted to try and recreate that in this rum.
Well, not for me. I was really excited when the 2023 came out, because for me, I kept like the 50th anniversary was good. The 2021 was better. And then the 2022 for me was even better than that. And it was just exciting to see that evolution in the liquid that you have there. Mitch, once you're done with this slide, there's a couple of good questions here by Samuel that maybe we can circle back to. But
Yeah.
do you want to talk a bit about what was different? Like, I think you just pulled up your recipe card there.
Yeah, so let's just have a little deep dive into the 2022 for a second. So one of the things that you'll notice on this year's blend breakdown is it's much more extensive than the previous years. So if we go back to 2021, for example, oh, that one's the PDF's having a meltdown. There's too much information on it. It's not happening. Anyway, the 2021, luckily we've got it on the label. You have 9 different components here and 9 different casks that are going into this blend. In 2022, you'll notice there's a lot more variety in the components, and part of this happened because when Ollie started this blend, he actually was leaning towards creating a Jamaica forward blend, and he started on just the Jamaica section. He took some of his favorite casks of Jamaican rum, made his perfect Jamaica blend. And if you look at it, I think the youngest rum in there is 22 years. The oldest rum is 27 years. So a 22 to 27 year super blend of Jamaican rum. We worked out that from the casks we had, we'd get about 400 bottles, and it would probably cost about £700-800 a bottle. And it was delicious, but not quite what we needed for Master Blenders Reserve. So Sukhinder said, well, look, that's great, but go away and look at how to make this bigger. And so Ollie took that idea of creating this super blend for one country and then said, well, what if I did that for each region? So he created his favorite Guyanese blend, his favorite Barbados blend, his favorite Trinidad blend, mixed this with the Perpetual Reserve, and that became the 2022. And it's actually this blending style that he's then carried on to each following year. So this was quite a big shift for us. You'll notice the back label changes slightly because we couldn't fit all 20 components on the back label. So we actually switched to having a country summary on there. And when you scan the QR code, it then takes you to the website and gives you every single cask. So it's our way of still giving you all of the information, but yeah, we just needed either a bigger label, a bigger bottle maybe, or less components to squeeze it on.
Yeah, you probably could have put that on like a Magnum or a double Magnum.
Yeah.
A double Magnum of rum.
One day we'll get there.
No, it's cool. Well, I really love that style. I mean, there's something I like about all of them. I think the 50th anniversary for me is maybe a bit sweet for my taste, but what I like about these other two is that you pull back some of that deeper, darker, like sort of those Guyanese tones you were talking about, and you're allowing some of those fruitier elements to come through. But what's interesting with the 2022 is it starts to get a little darker and richer again, but it doesn't lose the fruit, which is kind of cool. So the questions that were here that he had, you talk about the sherry cask influence and cask influence on rums. He finds with a lot of rums, wood doesn't have a lot or doesn't leave a lot. And, you know, I guess, what can you talk about the influence of the casks? Because rum casks are probably fairly unusual for rum. Most of it's ex-bourbon, refill ex-bourbon. So maybe some comments on that and how that might affect the profiles.
Yeah, okay, and Samuel, these are big questions. There's probably, to do it justice, we'd need a couple of hours to really dig into it, but I'll do my best with the time we have. So so one of the things you mentioned about in your question, Samuel, is about sherry cask influence, what different casks would do, and that you find that rum maybe ages different to whiskey and has a different flavor profile to some whiskey. So let's have a look at that. First of all, the type of cask you use and how it affects the liquid inside is going to be largely determined by the climate and where you're aging it. So you've got to remember that if you're comparing this to Scotch or Canadian whiskey or anything else that you might be drinking, the climate change to the Caribbean is going to be a completely different world for that cask to live in. The way the wood interacts with the liquid, the amount of angel share, the loss, the evaporation from the barrel will be, in Scotland, maybe 1 to 2% per year. In the Caribbean, you could lose anywhere from 6 to 10% per year. Now, one of the things you'll sometimes hear rum people talk about is that, 5 years aged in Barbados is like 15 years aged in Scotland. It's 3 times the speed. That's not really accurate either. In terms of loss from the barrel, yeah, okay. 5 years in Barbados, you would probably have about 15 years worth of loss from the barrel. But in terms of how the flavors impact the liquid and how it affects it, again, I always bring it back to cooking, but if you were to, cook a steak and on a cast iron pan, really hot, 2 minutes, sear the edges, do the whole thing, or you took that same piece of meat and slow cooked it for 24 hours, both might be delicious, but you're going to have a completely different meal at the end of it, completely different textures, flavors coming through. And if you took 2 barrels of rum, put one for 5 years in Barbados, one 15 years in Scotland, even if they started off exactly the same, as close as possible, the 2 rums you'd have at the end would taste different, and not necessarily that one was better or worse, but just that you will have different flavors develop in the cask. And so this is one thing to consider, and one thing you'll notice on our blend breakdowns, we always have tropical aging versus continental aging, because a lot of these casks start their lives, obviously in the Caribbean, might age there for 5, 10, 15 years, but then when they're bought, if possible, they're always shipped in cask, and then they carry on aging, but in a colder climate. Now, we give the breakdown of the two because, that extra 5 years in Scotland or Liverpool or Amsterdam, wherever it is going to have a different impact on the barrel that the 5, 10, 15 years in the Caribbean did. So that's one thing to bear in mind to start with. In terms of what the casks do to the liquid and the effect on the liquid, there's another element here where every distillery will choose its casks and choose the wood that it uses. And to be honest, most of the time, the better the distillery, the more picky they'll be with the cask types and the wood types and what they're using. Now, if you're in a very, very hot country in the Caribbean, you might not want a younger cask. If you were to use virgin oak, say, famed for use in bourbon barrels, but if you were using virgin oak in a very hot environment, the impact of the tannins coming from that wood are going to be very, very big, very harsh, very high because of the heat and the climate you're working with. So a lot of the times, a lot of distilleries might choose to use second fill, third fill, older casks so that the wood impact is slightly less and that they can afford to age for longer without the wood overpowering the liquid. Then you've got to factor in, is the rum very light? Is the rum very heavy? Because that will obviously balance out with the wood as well. So every single step of the way, there's all these different choices you can make. And so it's very hard to make a direct comparison with what happens in the rum world versus what happens in the whiskey world. In terms of your question, what does aging really do? Multiple things. Yes, you're going to get certain flavors coming from the wood itself. Yes, you're going to get certain flavors depending on what was in that wood previously, because, when you age something in a barrel, let's say 4% or so of the volume of that barrel will be locked in the wood and will carry on into the liquid of the next thing you're aging in there. So you're going to have some impact from the liquid, you're going to have some impact from the wood, you're going to have, depending on how old the wood is, it's going to have an impact. The oxygen exchange, you say, does it create esters? Yes, it can do. The aldehydes in the liquid will be broken down into esters with oxygen exchange over time. That takes a very long time to happen and depends on how many esters you have in the liquid. So there's lots of lots of aspects to that question and what can happen. But really what it comes down to, and the most important thing is the distillery, the blender, the person making the rum is the one who makes all those choices. And if you trust that person and you trust that distillery, it's like going to a restaurant. You trust the chef to make the right decisions all along the way, and you know you're going to have a great meal at the end. If you know that distillery makes amazing rum, chances are whoever's in charge makes great choices at every step along the way. They're not cutting corners, they're not buying cheap barrels, they're really being particular, and you know you're going to have a great rum at the end of it.
Yeah. No, maturation is such an interesting thing, and Brennan's got an interesting comment there about the sherry industry not looking for vessels that are going to add too much to the wine. But I mean, the same is true of port. I always find it funny that people like to mature things in port casks, because when you go to the port houses in Villanova de Gaia and you ask them about, do they sell their casks to the whiskey industry? They're like, we don't replace our casks. Like if a stave is like broken, we replace the stave, but we use the casks until they're dead. Like they don't
Yeah.
want wood that's going to impart flavor. It's a vessel for maturation and oxidation and all those magical things that happen in there. And to your point, Mitch, we could go on and talk about maturation and all those things for hours. But one of the things that I think is funny, and I don't know if this is still top secret or I've been to a certain Scottish distillery that looks like, Willy Wonka would have built it, where there's a Solera system. Are we allowed to discuss this? Is that open knowledge?
Yeah, absolutely. So we built a Solera system. We've for our Black Tot historic Solera that's coming out, and you'll notice you'll see more and more of this coming online when we do it. I'm just trying to see if there's a picture I have to hand to show you guys of it, but I'm really excited for you guys to try our Black Tot historic Solera, because we bought these 70-year-old Solera casks from a bodega in Jerez. As Samuel mentions in the comments, 70-year-old casks, the wood itself is not adding flavor. It's all about the oxygenation. It's all about the fractional blending that you're doing between the casks. And what we do is we take our finest Caribbean, we first put it into Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso casks for up to 2 years. That gives it the big hit of sherry, and then we put it through this 3-tier Solera system. And it's really, I think everything we do at Black Tot is about trying these different forms of blending and really trying it to the nth degree, really seeing, what's the most authentic, most obsessive way we can do this, and what does it taste like, and we get some pretty amazing results with it. So hopefully we can do this tasting again next year and have some historic Solera for you guys as well.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. I got a chance to try it, so excited. I expect we probably won't see that until maybe January, but I could be wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's it's pretty cool, and if you look on our website, you'll get a lot of information. One thing that I don't think we've shared anywhere yet, because we're probably still making it look a bit pretty, but I can show you one of the things I always used to question when people talked about Soleras was like, well, I've never actually seen a Solera. So, because in sherry, in Jerez, you see these Solera systems, you see it in play. But a lot of the times in rum, we talk about it, but we don't see a Solera system. So you can have a little first glimpse of this is our Solera system as it was being built. And you'll see C2, C1, S on the back. So C2, C refers to Criadera, which means level in the Solera system. So you have the 2 levels, and then Solera being the final bottom layer, if you like. It means the floor, and that's where the rum will go through. So the rum will go from the PX and Oloroso casks into the Solera system, and then over the last 3 years, every year we move the rum across. So we take half out of the Solera layer, we put half from the C1 into the Solera layer, half from C2 into the C1, and then the new rum into the C2. And over years, this will develop and develop and develop. I'm trying to convince Ollie to stack it up to make it look really pretty, but this is currently how it's was
Baby
sitting when we were
steps,
setting
Mitch.
it up. So
That's
yeah, it's a
cool.
real Solera, which is kind of exciting and fun.
All right, where are we? Are we on to the 2023 now?
2023, yes. So moving on from 2022, 2023 took a different tact again. 23 for me became a lot more fruit forward again. And almost this year's one almost reminded me, if anyone's tried a really fruity Coroni, a lighter style Coroni, this year really sort of was reminiscent of that for me. Not the diesel heavy petrol ones that people like to talk about with Coroni, but the really fruity, delicious ones. This one for me did that perfectly. And when you look at the blend breakdown, so 30% Guyana, almost 20% of the perpetual blend, which is the 2022 and the flagons. So there's still a lot of that chocolate, molasses, heavier flavors coming through. But then the Barbados, the Jamaica, the Trinidad, and the Grenada in this year's one gives. The Grenada was this 28-year-old Grenadan cask, and Ollie was looking for a particular citrus note, and this Grenada cask had it. And so, why not add a 28-year-old Grenada just to get that little citrus note you're looking for? And it's, again, I think it's a beautiful blend. For me, this really has a beautiful balance between the chocolate and the fruit, and almost has this sort of chocolate raisin note for me, which I really love as well.
Brennan had a good call here about the flavor on this, and that there's these really strong vegetal chocolatey tones. And the 2023 is far more vegetal than, the 2022, which was a bit chocolatey and fruity, and then the 2021, which was more on that fruity side. It is kind of an interesting evolution, but to kind of understand also where you're going with this, there is that perpetual component, but every year the blend's going to go in a slightly different direction based on, I suppose, what rabbit hole Ollie decides to go down, or that and what's available for blending that year.
Yeah, and I think it's fantastic that we have the chance to do a tasting like this. And as I say, it's very, very rare that we can have all of these bottles next to each other, because I think a lot of the time people, might say, oh, Master Blender's Reserve, and okay, it's got a different year, but they don't necessarily know that the flavor changes this much year to year. And sometimes people say like, oh, what's your favorite? Which for the first 2-3 years I was trying to figure that out, and now for me it's more what's the occasion. So each of the years for me has a different feel, a different time of day. Like 2022 for me is my nightcap run, which is perfect now at 3 a.m. 2022 would be my end of the night run. 21 is a lot more challenging. It's a lot more high ester. So when I want something a bit more complex, I want to think about it a bit more. The 21 I go for. 23 is a lot easier drinking. The extra fruit in it makes it, for me, more of a mid-afternoon rum, this one, and and the 50th anniversary has a real sentimental place for me, at least, because it's our first one in the lineup, and the first time where we did all the blend percentages and really sort of set the tone with it all. So yeah, hopefully they're all in their own way worth a spot on your shelves. It really just depends where your palate goes, and we'd probably find, I'm sure, if we did a vote here, everyone would have a different favorite. Everyone would have something that they leant towards more than one or the other. So
Brennan had a question here. Presumably no chance that the Granada is Grand Arome style, is it?
Not really. So Grand Arome normally we'd talk about as being like a more higher ester molasses based rum from places like Guadeloupe, for example. Not really. I mean, Grenada's style of rum. The famous one there is Rivers Antoine, but there's also distilleries like Westerhall there. They make beautiful rums, very full, flavorful, high ester rums. I wouldn't necessarily describe them as Grand Arome style. But one interesting little note in the 2023, which kind of does stand out from all the rest, is you may notice in the blend breakdown that we have a cask of 10 cane from Trinidad in there.
Mm.
And 10 cane is now a closed distillery. It was a project they did on Trinidad a few years ago where they were trying to do cane juice rum on Trinidad. And it didn't sell very well. They shut it down after a few years. It turned out, though, if you just waited long enough, 10 cane became absolutely delicious. And you'll notice there's a couple of independent bottlers like Holmes K and a couple of others which are putting out these 10K releases now. And if you see it, it's really worth getting and really worth trying. It's beautiful, beautiful rum. So we used a cask of 15-year-old 10 cane in there, and that's the first time that we see cane juice rum in any of our blends. So yeah, that is a little nod in there, which might give you a different flavor in there as well.
Who would have thought the secret to business success was to have enough money to just wait a little longer?
So
I
often the
mean,
case, right? It's
especially in the distilled spirits industry where time is everything and time is also money simultaneously. So
yeah.
do you think at any point here you might see some renegade rums finding their way into your blends? I
Who
mean,
knows, right? It's yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the Renegade Distillery. Obviously, it's yeah, for those who don't know, it's in Grenada, an amazing
always
guys,
does this.
and single estate, same idea as Waterford, single estate, single region cane, and different showing different terroir just within the Grenada region. And they made some really fantastic rums, but yeah, unfortunately they've had to put the distillery up for sale. So we will see. It'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I'd be fascinated to see what it became, because some of the early aged expressions they were releasing were really, really tasty. So
But as you say, it's early days and yeah, things are afoot. But it was one of the big rum brokers that bought it, wasn't it? Anyway, we don't need to go down that road.
to my knowledge, nothing's been confirmed yet. It's all still
It's all
up in
still
there.
rumors.
Lots of speculation, but yeah, I
Oh,
haven't seen anything actually confirmed yet. So
interesting. Okay. All right. Uh, well, I don't know. 2023, I think there's some people here that really dig it. I think I'm still more 2022. That's sort of my jam. So I'm excited to see where we go with 2024, which is not available yet, but coming, I believe best guess would be January. That's when it's coming, maybe sooner. But I believe it's on
Oh,
the
really? So but you guys have some to taste?
yeah, we have some to taste. It's in a glass
Amazing.
in front of me here. Uh
Fantastic.
we won't comment on how that happened, but yeah, magically there's some for us all to taste.
It's amazing the things we can make happen in the rum world.
It is.
Rules are meant to be broken. So okay, so 2024. So you guys then by that are some of the first people in Canada to be tasting it. So that's pretty cool.
There we go.
So as with every year, Master Blenders Reserve, we release it every year for Black Tot Day, so in July. And yeah, it does take a little time, obviously, to get to different markets, different places. This year we changed tact a little bit. So this year we actually decided to have a hero country and a hero focus, and this year we went with Barbados. And Barbados, as anyone knows, if you're into your rums, you know, you get these beautiful fruit, vanilla, coconut notes coming through. It makes up 60% of the blend, so really, really leaning into the Barbados side here. That's followed up by Trinidad at 25%, then 5% Jamaica, 5 Guyana, and 5% of the previous year. So quite light on the perpetual blend and very light on the Guyana. And again, when you drop the Guyana down, what I find is it really allows the fruit flavors of these other countries really to shine through and come through. So the Guyana almost acts like almost like a little bitters in the blend, like it adds depth and complexity. But all those fruit flavors come through on the other islands. And when we look at the blend breakdown here, so you've got some Foursquare, West Indies, Mount Gay. You've got a 22-year-old Mount Gay pot still in there, which is very unique in itself. One normally Mount Gay will always be a pot and column blend, so very rare when you get a pot still only expression from them in the cask. So fantastic to have that in the blend. You've got some 26-year-old Caroni, again, this Lofts distillery from Trinidad, which rum nerds go crazy over. We've got some of that in New Yarmouth, Clarendon, Long Pond, some of the most amazing distilleries in Jamaica again. Some old Demerara Distillers rum from Diamond Distillery there, and that little bit from 2023. And 8 flagons of Navy rum that we added this year. And if you want to see them, if you guys are on Instagram and you want to follow me or the brand, you'll see us actually open the 8 flagons that went into this year's blend, and we tested the ABV, and you actually see sort of us behind the scenes in the warehouse with these flagons this year. So so yeah, we were there. We counted them. 8 flagons went into the blend this year. So this year's release is a little bit more limited. So there's only 3,000 bottles this year, whereas the previous years were all around the 5,000 mark. That was partly because some of the rums that Ollie used in this year's blend were a little bit older and a little bit fewer. And rather than sort of dial down the blend, Ollie just liked it how it was, and so we just released less bottles. So it's a little bit less available this year on this one compared to the others. But for me, this is definitely the most, I think the most approachable, the most fruity, the most juicy out of all the Master Blenders reserves. My colleague Chanel described this like biting into a juicy pineapple, which I love. I think about that every time now when I drink this rum, and my mouth just starts watering straight away. So yeah.
This is the most spirit driven of all of the rums we've had so far. Like, it's the one that's got the least kind of oak presence, and that's kind of cool because it's giving you, I mean, a lot of that naked sort of natural spirit profile, allowing it to creep through. I really love it. I mean, I think I like that because I generally don't like too much oak, especially in my whiskeys. Distillery that you know you're part of the same group with now, Tormore. I really love Tormore, like naked ex-bourbon Tormore after 20, 30 years, because you just it really seems to hit its stride at that point. Yeah, this is a toss-up for me whether I like this or the 2022 better. I mean, it's so different from the rest, but I you know, on one hand, you're kind of disappointed that that perpetual component went down, but on the other hand, I really love the profile of this particular release.
Yeah, thank you. It's yeah, it's definitely I think it's one of my favorites. And again, it kind of depends what you're looking for in your rum. You know, some people it's really interesting, especially when you know we're in about 30 different countries now, and when I go from country to country, every country has a different flavor palette, and they have different things which they lean towards. So like Germany loves high ester, funky, big full-on rums, so they lean more to towards years like the 2021, which is a little funkier, a little high ester, and then other countries prefer that lighter style, that more approachable style of the 2024. So it really depends on sort of where your palate is. You know, there's no right or wrong to it. You might like one year, your partner likes another year entirely. So yeah, but hopefully within the range, there's something for everyone and something for every palate, and we'll just continue to develop that every year as well.
So before we wrap here, Mitch, and I'm gonna have to give him shit tomorrow because Evan didn't create a poll. So I'm busily doing that right now. In his defense, like we kind of thanklessly expect him to do it. And then when it's not there, I'm scrambling to put it together. So we'll quickly get that done. But there were a couple of other questions there. Samuel had another complex question. Where was it here?
Samuel's question was, after blending the rum components together, how long do you let them sit before bottling?
Yeah, that's a great question. Really, as long as possible is the answer. So when you first blend any alcohols together, they don't always sit that well straight away together. They need time to actually blend and come together. So the longer you have to let them blend and let them spend time together, the better. For 2024, for example, I was just actually looking back at my calendar when we went to Tormore. I think it was maybe as early as October, November that we went to Tormore and actually blended them together for the 2024 release. So we did that one quite early, and Andrew mentioned, you know, we over the last few years we were able to buy the Tormore distillery, where we actually now have rum warehousing for the first time. So before, because we're an independent, we're a small company, we're always using third-party warehouses. Now we actually have our own warehouses, and it means that we can actually do all the blending in-house, make sure no mistakes happen. And so we went to Tormore and blended everything together. And when you say how is it done, basically we created each country blend by itself. So we did the Barbados, the Jamaica, the Guyana, the Trinidad. You have like essentially a hose which pumps it out of the barrel into a ICB, into a plastic container, and we put it into there. We create each country blend by itself. It's not the most romantic looking thing, but you know, and then as long as possible, we give it time to marry there, and then as long as possible together in a vat, so that all of those flavors have time to marry and sit together. And you noticed it more in the early releases on the 50th and the 2021, where we were using these third-party blending houses, but the flavor would actually change in the bottle over time as the flavors were still marrying together over the first 2, 3, even up to 6 months, I'd say. Whereas now, I think because we're blending in house and we're giving it that time before it even goes into the bottle, you have, I think it's much more settled. It's much more integrated by the time you guys get it. And certainly by the time it arrives in Canada, you'll be fine. So you'll be very well married by then.
Very
So,
cool.
Mitch, Jeff's got a very controversial question here. He's asking which country has the best flavor palette. And we know it's not Germany. But no, all kidding aside, that's a controversial question. But like, as someone who really genuinely loves rum, where are you blown away? Like, what countries are you like, wow, this country gets it. This country gets rum.
It's a tough question, and obviously there's no right or wrong answer to that question. I think, you know, I mean, even with the Germans loving their high ester, they're just a very intense people. They like big flavors, and it carries through into their spirits and everything. But with one example, I think where I saw the best, for me, the best example of people's palate in action was in France, and I think part of that is because they obviously start them drinking when they're about 4 years old, but we were the first show I ever did in France. France is very much leaning towards rum agricoles, you know, cane juice based rums. They're much more familiar with
Mhm.
that because that's what they have in every supermarket. They have much more access to those styles of rum, and molasses rum is a very different flavor profile for them altogether. So they're sort of getting used to our styles of rum a bit more. And I remember this lady came up and she was trying one of our rums. I forget which one, and she came up and she was a novice to rum. She'd never really tried molasses based rum before, and she smelt it and she gave me about 10 or 12 different things she got on the nose. Then she tried it and she described every single thing on the palate that I would think of to talk about the rum and more. And afterwards I said, wow, that's incredible. Do you like the rum? And she said, no, but you know, had perfectly described every single flavor and nose in it, and that for me is really the perfect, such a great example of a good palate is when you can still appreciate a liquid, even if it's not to your taste, still dissect it, still be able to give flavor notes. It might not be your style, but you know, I think in England, especially where I grew up in Essex, if someone put something in their mouth and they tried a rum that they didn't like, they'd immediately make a face or spit it out, you know. And this woman really described it perfectly, but it just wasn't for her, which is amazing, you know. So
Some controversial comments on different European nations in the chat. We'll just leave that where it's at. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to trigger the poll here. Now, because Evan didn't create the poll, as you may know, there is sometimes a cheeky third question in the poll that Evan likes to ask. So I've asked a cheeky third question myself. We'll get to that in a moment. We'll allow this to play out. In the interim, Mitch, I'm going to put you on the spot. We always make the hosts declare their 3 favorite rums. So
Ooh.
if you had to pick 3 from the 6 we went through tonight, which 3 would you pick?
Ooh. It's like picking your favorite child. But obviously everyone does have favorites. So
Yeah, and as parents,
50th anniversary, definitely, because as I say, it's got a sentimental place in my heart as being the first one we did this all on, and the first rum that I launched with the brand. So definitely 50th anniversary. I think the 2022 as well. I love the 22. It's very rich and decadent, and as I say, it's my favorite sort of nightcap run out of them. Oh, I don't know. I'm sort of
Favorite.
the third one's tricky. I'm actually going to pick Finest Caribbean because I really enjoy having the Negronis in my fridge, and and I need it for my daiquiris and vitamin C intake. So I think Finest Caribbean is going to be my third pick as well in that bunch.
I had a suspicion that's the direction you were going, and fair enough. We'll take it. Harmony, how about you? What were your favorites tonight?
Um, I'm kind of in a similar boat as you. I do love the regular Finest Caribbean. It's the only rum that I have on my bar. So it definitely made its way home. So that's great. The 50th is fantastic and special. Um, and usually I checkerboard my bottles closest to me based on how I feel about them. But the fact that this 2024 is completely empty, I think says something. And I did really the 2021, or sorry, 2022 was something I could really get behind as well. I really liked it. It's 2023 was all raisins and chocolate, which is fine. But I thought that 2024 and the 2022 were special.
Mhm.
That might be 4, but they're good.
I'm going 2022, 2024, 2021. That's my
Cool.
final answer. I'm pretty dialed in on this,
Yeah.
but honorable mention. I mean, I I love making like the left-hand cocktail that you guys have on your site is one of my favorites. I do like mixing it in there, throwing it in there as a Negroni. It is a solid rum for cocktails, so definitely love it. So here are the results of the poll. 50th anniversary finishing first. To be totally honest, not really surprised there.
Yeah.
2021, 2022 coming in second. And then second favorite, which is always the interesting one. Everybody gets a vote, but that 2024 really creeping to the front. So that's interesting to see. And then our cheeky poll questions. Why did Evan not create it? Spite, because he knows I expect him to. That was the surprise winner. Sheer laziness. Everyone knows Evan's not lazy. Maybe sometimes doesn't prioritize the things that I think he should. And then it's just a rum tasting, which is a bit of a dirty, cheeky comment. But the right one won there. In truth, he probably just completely forgot. But I'll share the results if you want to browse them quickly yourself. Mitch, before we wrap up tonight's tasting, any comments you want to make? Any about? I mean, obviously we have the new release to look forward. Well, two new releases to look forward to in the new year. The 2024 edition, which we just tried, as well as the historic Solera. But anything else? Like, what has Black Tot got? Anything else in the pipeline that we should know about?
Oh, it's always hard to say because Ollie keeps a lot of the cards close to his chest. I usually find out about them about a few weeks before you guys do. But I think at the moment, I mean, certainly the Master Blenders Reserve series, we love and we'll be carrying on each year. So keep an eye out for that, and you know, really, we love getting these bottles out to you guys. So I mean, if where the support's there, and as hopefully the fan base in Canada starts to grow, you know, we can make sure these come to you guys quicker and quicker, and get you to them nearer at the time. So so thank you all for the support. I'm really excited for you guys to try Historic Solera, because I think really there's if you like sherry and you like sherry cask influence on your spirits, you will love it. If you don't like sherry, it won't be for you. It's very sherry forward. It's really spent 5 years in these casks. So I love it because I don't think there's anything really like it in the rum world before. You know, you've never seen Barbados, Guyana, Jamaica put through a Solera system before. It's something really unique in the rum world that we've added. So I'm excited for that to reach you guys. But we should, one thing I would like to add is we should do a little toast together before we finish up as well.
Absolutely.
Because this is a very important part of our tasting. So I don't know if anyone still has some rum left.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
Barely.
can't believe we're gonna finish without the toast.
Well, I could do a blend. I could blend the dribs
Blend
of all mine and create a master blenders reserve.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, so grab your rums. Now we're gonna do something that we should never, ever do on a Zoom tasting. And in a moment, I'm gonna ask you all to unmute yourselves so we can do this toast together, okay? So
Okay, allow me to
get your videos on if you can, if you're not in your pajamas. So all right, so this is a 400-year-old toast. It was taught to me by the guy who taught me about rum, and I think it's perfect to share over a few tots of rum like this together. So I'll say the first line, you repeat after me, and you have to do the arm movements as well. Okay, it's very important. All right, has everyone got this? Is everyone ready? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So ready. So there are tall ships.
There are
Tall ships.
Okay, let's try and get this all together. Ready? Okay, one more time. So there are tall ships.
There are tall ships.
And there are small ships.
And there are
small ships.
And there are ships that sail the sea.
And there are
ships that sail the sea.
But the best ships
But the best
Got the
ships.
best ships.
our friendships.
our friendship.
Friendship.
So here's to you and me.
So here's to you.
Here's
and
to
you.
you.
Here's to you and
Cheers.
me.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Mm.
Well, Mitch, on behalf of everyone, thank you again for staying up so late for us to do this tasting, and also making those of us who aspire to have a Negroni fridge to feel comfortable in who they are as people and know that they're not alone in the world.
It's honestly, there is never a time where you're going to regret having that Negroni fridge. So especially when it's a rum Negroni in there.
Mitch,
so.
Look, you did an incredible job with this tasting. The story behind the brand, all the components, fascinating. Without the Negroni fridge, your esteem is already very high, but the Negroni fridge pushed it through the roof. So, yeah, blown away.
No, thank you so much, guys, and thank you to you guys for putting this tasting together, and to all the team at Kensington Wine Market, because yeah, it's great to be able to do these things and bring all of these people together. And please, if any of you, I know there's lots more questions and things happening in the chat here on the Zoom, but please stay in touch if you want to message me on Instagram, or you've got any questions or anything like that. Please feel free. I'll put my email in the chat as well. It's just mitch@blacktot.com. And yeah, or follow us on Instagram and say hello. So
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Mitch. And one final thank you to our friends at Pacific Wine and Spirits, who are always very good at helping with all of this stuff. So great partners to work with. So Harmony, Mitch, thank you. Everyone, thank you for this tonight. If you don't catch Mitch's email before we sign off here, feel free to send me a note. I'll be happy to get it to you. But thanks for taking part in tonight's tasting, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your night. Mitch, you have a great rest of your tomorrow.
thank you. It's just coming up to 4 a.m. now, so so yeah, seems like a good time to be drinking rum, to be honest.
Time for a Negroni, maybe.
Absolutely.
Mitch.
Cheers,
Good
everyone.
night.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, guys.